Hello, and welcome to episode 1110 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Tuesday, November 1st. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning, sir.
Hey, we're gonna do episode 1111 in FPAS.
I know, cool. We didn't even plan to land on a cool little unique number there. So that'll be fun. That'll be Saturday night live with Jason. We'll be in Arizona. I'm excited. You're leaving tomorrow. I leave 2 days from now, and we'll get some baseball. But we'll also be getting some World Series out there, which I don't love. And the only reason I don't love it, it's not that I don't love watching games with y'all, is now 6 and 7 could really, if it goes 7, which it certainly could take away from the conference a bit and some of the main events that are happening, being that they're on Saturday and Sunday. That's the home run derby and the all-star game. And I don't know, that's a bummer. I think a lot of people will be like us, where we will just watch on our phones and kind of keep an eye that way. But I hope it doesn't take a bunch of people kind of from wanting to go in general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it will. I think most people will end up still going to the events. I'm rooting that it's a sweep from here on out, right? We got a 1-1. Game 1 was one of the best World Series games we've had in a long time. Game 2 was fine. It's been a fun series already. Now, whoever wins Game 3, just take 4 and 5, so that way we can enjoy watching 5 on Thursday night in Arizona and do our events Saturday and Sunday. Make sure if you are coming out to First Pitch Arizona, you come up and chill with us. Like, I think some people, yeah, I think every once in a while people who are coming to these events are like afraid to like approach like us. Like, come hang out with us, come sit down and chat with us. Like, that's like, the panels are great, love the panels. The games are great, love the games. But the best part of First Pitch Arizona is sitting down and talking to people. I learn so much every year by just sitting down with some of the smartest people in the industry and some of the best players in the game, and just kind of absorbing their knowledge. Plus, I get lunch or dinner paid for me by Rob Silver. I won my bet, and
because you stayed under your league count.
Because I didn't play in more than 17 leagues, and true to his word, he jumped into my DMs this week. He's like, "All right, let's set this up." He goes, "I pay my bets."
He does.
Rob Silver, Rob Silver's a man of his word, and I'm looking forward to a nice lunch or dinner with Rob Silver.
Sounds fantastic. I can't wait to link up with Rob, among others, and hang out. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And like I said, even though Game 6, 7, it doesn't sound like a bad thing. I totally understand. I want the focus on the conference, not everyone crowding around a TV and just watching the World Series. But people can make their own decisions. I'm not going to bully or shame anybody if they want to stick in the hotel and just watch the games. Honestly, especially if they're a Houston or Philly fan, I totally get it. In that case, I'm just ignoring you and moving on. Today, what we're going to talk about is some average draft position changes from last year. I finally figured out how to get the ADP data. It's a little bit of a challenge. If you're used to the ADP site, the NFBC site, you might be wondering why it doesn't show up for the stuff that's out for this year already, even though drafts have been going on. The key: do not change to draft champions. There's a draft selector where you can select the different types. Change the date to October 1st, 2022, but do not change from all drafts. I don't know why they don't show under draft champions. Even the ones that are just draft champions, doesn't matter. That's how you do it. But what I wanted to do was compare last year to this year and kind of see who are some of the biggest movers. And, some of these aren't going to be too surprising. When we get to say biggest risers, I took out like closers, for example. That is such a massive thing that will change a reliever's outlook that I thought, not that it's cheating, but it doesn't really offer any insight. We say, oh, if they have a closer's job, yes, we're interested. Oh, Ryan Helsley moved up 42 billion spots from last year. Duh. We know why. So I tried to focus on players that aren't closers, basically. Let's start with our top 5 undrafted from last year. And we will start with a closer because he was undrafted. And I want to know really what you think about him. And I know we've talked a bit about him because we both drafted him. I think I kind of want to get your concern level that A, they bring in somebody else, or B, just let somebody else have the job. And I have one name that could do it. So these are top 5 undrafted from 2021 that are now being drafted this year. 4 of them are in the top 300 picks, and then another one just outside who we're actually going to see at AFL. But let's start with Alexis Diaz. presumed closer for Cincinnati. Again, we both believe it to some degree because we both drafted him. Me as my number one, you as your number two behind Liam Hendriks, so you're in a much better spot there than I am. He is the brother of Edwin Diaz, of course. Had a really nice season, only 10 saves, but 7 wins chipped in. He was in high leverage, wasn't always in the closer's role. 184 ERA, 0.96 whip, 83 strikeouts in 63 2/3 for Alexis Diaz. We know, or we assume that Cincy is not going to be a particularly good team. So we can put that off to the side. We know his saves count won't be huge, even if he has the job from day one. But what is your level of concern? Where do you put him on the riskometer, if you will, the riskometer for closing? Are you concerned that he will get pushed out by somebody in-house or they go elsewhere? Or does the 26-year-old Diaz in Cincinnati get to hold the gig?
I mean, I'm somewhat concerned just because Cincinnati's MO since trading Rafael Iglesias has been, and even times before Iglesias really established himself as the dude, was to share the job. Like they didn't really go with one guy. Now I think you can make the argument that they didn't have the one guy to go with, and once they did, they went with him in Iglesias prior to trading him to Los Angeles. That being said, I don't know. I don't really trust that management staff in Cincinnati. So I think if you're betting on skills, and what I did in my draft, and I think what you did in your draft was bet on the skills. You're going to get strikeouts. He was electric, especially in the second half. First half was a little bumpy, but really kind of came into his own. And he led the Reds in saves in the second half. He had 7 second half saves. The next highest guy was Hunter Strickland, who's not even going to be on the team.
Yeah,
they've got Lucas Sims, but I've never been a Lucas Sims guy. Like this,
I don't think you can trust Lucas Sims' health.
Yeah, the bandwagon for Lucas Sims just is. It should be done at this point, but if it like fires back up, I'm not going to be on it. I think
I don't see a world where Sims would overtake Diaz on spec. Maybe in season, if Diaz was struggling and Sims was excelling, sure, flip flop there. But coming into the year, I'd be really surprised if they leapfrog Sims over Diaz. I'll tell you the name that I'm looking out for though, and I drafted this guy too, so I feel like I'm a bit covered. What about TJ Antone, returning from TJ from last year? He's had a long time off. I wonder if maybe he could get the job. He had the surgery last August, so he had over a year recovery. So he's going to be pretty well removed from that injury come this spring. TJ Antone was somebody who was really intriguing before he got hurt. That's somebody that I think could play a role there. But I also wonder if maybe they look for him as an extended, fireman type, where they're going multi-inning outings with TJ Antone. So I see him as maybe a little bit of a concern. Took him, hundreds upon hundreds of picks later. What do you think of TJ Antone?
Yeah, I mean, Antone, I think is an interesting arm, but I think they want him in kind of that fireman role if he's healthy. I mean, I know the last report I saw on him is that he was only throwing 85. Now he was only throwing off a flat ground. He wasn't throwing off a mound, but that's pretty far removed from the 97 we saw him at prior to the injury.
Better than to take anything out of those.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I think Diaz would have to be bad to lose this job. Like I think he would legitimately have to be bad. So I think if you're looking for a guy and you want to like lock up Cincinnati saves, I don't know why you would. That's the team you'd want to lock up saves on, because I don't think Cincinnati's going to be particularly good necessarily. But I guess
it could be sneaky decent, by the way. Let me just interject that quickly. And I'm not projecting them to be like a contender, but you got Green and Lodolo atop the rotation. Mm-hmm. You got the prospects that are going to start coming in and hopefully making an impact, in addition to some guys that are already there ready to be impact. We got to see Tyler Stevenson stay healthy. Let's see a rebound from Jonathan India. I'm a big Jake Fraley guy. I think they could start to maybe make some things come together. TJ Friedel is your boy. So I think some things could come together to where they're not necessarily a super low tier team. They won 62 this year. They went 62 and 100. Remember, they had that unbelievably dreadful start. What was it, like 3-20 or something? Mm-hmm. I think they can avoid that fate this year and be a bit more of a run of the mill bad team, say low 70s kind of wins, which you can get 20, 30 saves off of that. or 25-30, I should say, if he's given the role. Alexis Diaz is given the role and just free to go with it. But yeah, I agree. I think he needs to falter to come out of it. Let's move on to our next guy here, or else we're going to take forever if we're spending 20 minutes on everyone. First of many Braves we're going to talk about. This will not surprise you, not necessarily on this list, but across the entire show today, because there were a lot of Braves movers and shakers, and you can probably guess the three guys in particular. But the first one here that was undrafted last year, who's now a top 200 pick, is Vaughn Grissom at an ADP of 182. I'm really intrigued by what he was able to do off the top last year. Of course, the interesting thing is he's a second baseman. So is Ozzie Albies. I've been on record saying I think Vaughn Grissom can move to the outfield without incident, given, being a major league middle infielder tells me you can probably handle the outfield, especially a corner. What do you think of Vaughn Grissom going at a 182 ADP? Or, 182.
I prefer his ADP to his teammates who we're going to talk about at some point today, and Michael Harris. Grisham's kind of a tale of 2 months, like a really, really great August and kind of a ho-hum end of the season. But still, that ho-hum came with pretty decent skills. We're talking about like a 91% zone contact in the last month of the season, September, October. And I think they need to find him an everyday role. It's probably not going to be at second base because Ozzie Albies should be healthy coming into the season. But it should be somewhere, right? Like it's probably a super utility guy, or like I said, move to the outfield. There's no reason after all that Marcell Ozuna has done that he should continue to be an everyday player. I think they'll figure out a role for Grissom. Question is, like, where exactly does he play, and like where does he bat in that lineup? So I think he could kind of be a bottom of the order guy, hitting like 7 or 8. But I think playing every day, and I like the price. Like, he's not a guy that I think you need to worry about breaking the bank for. I think you can get him, after pick 160 and feel pretty confident he's going to end up on your team, and probably pick up some multi-position eligibility in season.
Yeah, I think so too. With Grissom, the multi-eligibility is really intriguing as well. I do think the ADP will rise if we start to get word that Grissom is going to head to the outfield and angle for a starting role in one of the corners. That people are going to start anticipating, okay, hey, I'm going to get second base off the top, and then I can add outfield in addition to this guy who's a intriguing power speed guy. He had a nice flourish, 156 plate appearances with 5 homers, 5 steals, 291, 353, 440 for his slash line. Very, very sharp. I don't think that's necessarily who he is. And then we start extrapolating from there. We know how dangerous the extrapolation game can be. But, it's a modest plate profile with the 22% K rate, 7% walk rate. He chases a decent bit, 35% on O swing. Where's that relative to average?
I think it's a bit high.
Yeah, average is like 30 maybe. If I recall correctly. I know you are usually in tune with those numbers there. So I don't know about I don't know about all that.
32.6.
Okay, so not egregious. It's about 2.6.
It's gone up year to year,
of course,
and will probably continue to do so. But it's not like, I think Michael Harris is, and we'll talk about him, is like obscenely high. Like, and you start to go, well, why is this guy a second round pick with these underlying skills?
He's got even bigger plate issues. I agree.
And I think the difference between the two, when you're talking about Michael Harris versus Vaughn Grissom, is Michael Harris's upside, and we saw it, right? It's through the roof. Like, he could just be an absolute monster if he can continue to get away with kind of these scary plate skills underneath the hood. Whereas Vaughn Grissom actually has a lot nicer plate skills underneath the hood, but I don't think the upside is nearly there. I think you're probably looking at a guy who, best case scenario, if he's getting the full-time playing time, it's probably like a 15-15 guy with, a good, average, maybe 15-15, 270, or maybe even 280. I'll take that. Pick 180. Like, I'd be fine with that, especially if you're going to start adding in multi-position eligibility. So I think a lot depends too. Like, what happens with Dansby Swanson? Is Swanson a guy that signs somewhere else? Because Grisham has played shortstop, a couple games at the major league level and in the minor leagues. So, like, the answer might be they let Dansby Swanson go, and Vaughn Grissom becomes their shortstop next year.
Yeah, it is a question. Do the Braves utilize the surplus that they have with these team-friendly deals to pay a big dog like Dansby, who's obviously going to make some pretty substantial money?
Yeah.
And I think there's a great case for them to go ahead and do that. I am eager to see if they do, and like you said, that would open up another avenue for Grissom if they go ahead and let Dansby walk. Joey Meneses is somebody we've talked about a bit this offseason, and we know, the easy comp is the Frank Schwindel stuff, who we're actually going to talk about later, as well as far as biggest fall-offs. He's not a one-to-one on Schwindel, and I think we've covered that on this show here, where I totally understand the comp, though. I make it myself. It is a little bit of a shorthand comp. You can call it lazy, but it's not. There's not nothing to it. It's just not a one-to-one. But you look at Meneses as a 30-year-old who popped 13 homers in 240 plate appearances, absolutely went off. There's a lot to like in what he did, even though we know it's not fully believable. His ADP is up from obviously undrafted last year to 228. Where do you stand on that price for Joey Meneses?
228, I think, is fine. He's just not going to be on a lot of my teams. Like, I don't buy what he did. I think this was a guy who, got a lot of playing time because he was on a bad team. Now, he's still on a bad team. Like, they're not necessarily. I don't see them as
they're not
buyers.
going anywhere next year.
Yeah, they're not buyers, especially with the talk that the owner wants to sell the team. Like, they're not going to shell out a crap ton of money right before he tries to offload the franchise. That being said, like, for a guy who hit as well as he did, like, I don't understand how. Like, he had just about a league average zone contact profile. Swing strike rate was 11%, which is right in line with where he struck out. Like, I think he'd still be kind of a low strikeout guy, but like, I don't think he's gonna have all these hits drop in the way he did in 2022. Which makes me wonder if he had a really inflated BABIP. And now that I look, a 371 BABIP, I think, carried a lot of the weight of that 324 batting average. I think he's probably like a teens home run hitter, maybe low 20s guy if he gets the full-time playing time he needs, with like a 260, 270 batting average. I think he's fine. And at pick 220 or something you said, I get that's not a bad, like, you're not losing your draft because you drafted Joey Meneses, but I don't think he's a guy that I'm targeting at all this year.
Yeah, I don't really see it where I would necessarily want Meneses on many teams. It's not an egregious price, like you say, but I don't think it's particularly good either. It is raised. Remember, the last time we talked about him, we were talking about where he went in my draft, which was pick 145. Unsurprisingly, the min by quite a bit. And, obviously we're not doing that. But even at this level here at 228, I don't know, man. I see Tristan Casas, Trey Mancini, Jared Walsh, Juan Yepes, Spencer Torkelson, Luke Voigt, all just going right after him. Just all those guys right there, I'd rather have at the same or cheaper price. So with Meneses, 30-year-old, I hope that he can have a big full season here, because it's fun to watch a guy break out like this, literally out of nowhere, and become something useful. But I don't have high hopes for it. Let's talk about a player who's not even in the majors yet, but he is very much expected to be, and that's Koudai Senga from Japan. He's going at pick 296 right now, and I did see him go in my draft as well. Hang on, let me pull up where he went. Senga went 329 in my draft, so beyond this ADP here. 232 is his low, 397 is his high. Pitcher from Japan, expected to come over. We don't know where he's going to be or anything, so it's very hard to analyze him beyond what we've seen in Japan and how we feel about him based off of that. And so I know that your analysis here is going to be a bit nebulous. But what do you think of Senga? I know one thing that I'm looking forward to is talking to Tim McLeod, who is the
Mm-hmm.
go-to guy for overseas players. He really keeps his finger on the pulse there. And if you're looking for information on, who's doing what, he usually has you on board with somebody well before they even come over. I remember learning about Masahiro Tanaka from him long before he came over. Kenta Maeda was another one that he got the jump on. And I'm looking at Senga here, and there's definitely some upside. But what do you think of Senga? It looks like the most recent thing I can see, at least as far as the news, is that the Red Sox are looking at him pretty heavily. What do you think of Senga, and can he be somebody who makes an instant impact in the majors?
I have no idea. Like, I'm not gonna like sit here and like try to figure out exactly like what he's gonna be. From the looks of it, doesn't seem like he's gonna be like a guy that comes over and like completely dominates in the way that other players have from Japan. I think he could come over and be I don't want to say Kikuchi-ish, because I think Kikuchi had some really, really high hopes and then really disappointed for much of
Every
his
year,
time.
people want to pretend that he's good.
I think he profiles, I think, a little bit kind of higher floor, lower ceiling would be my guess. But honestly, I've never seen him pitch. And I have zero idea. Like when I started seeing his name float around, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's like a minor leaguer I've never heard of. I think if you're gonna buy in drafts, now's the time, right? Like get him before he posts and stuff. But there's also a huge amount of risk because when we're talking about drafts right now, we're typically talking about draft and holds.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of people who, including myself, that wasted a draft spot on Saganu, like because he was supposed to be the guy that came over and was like this big pitching, prospect from Japan, and he never. They posted him, and he never. Or actually, I don't even know if they even posted him. But he never came over. Like, and so you waste that draft spot. I think there's some big risk to taking that gamble. I think if you're getting after pick 300, fine, you take the gamble. But the moment he signs, the helium is going to go through the roof. So if you want to get a share of him this year, it should be done prior to the posting, where everybody's like, okay, now I want to take the gamble on the high upside.
For sure. Yeah, if you're on board with Senga, you're 100% right. Getting a draft just to get him now because the price is unlikely to go down once he signs it. And I would say certain. It's certain to not go down. It will rise when he signs. 148 innings this year with a 189 ERA and a 104 WHIP, 159 strikeouts in Japan for Koudai Senga. That's Senga, and he's up at pick 296. And then the last here of the top 5 undrafteds is, like I said, somebody we're going to be able to get to see next week, and that's Matt Mervis, prospect hitter for the Cubs. And I believe he's first base eligible. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
First baseman. So 24 years old, just ripping the cover off the ball at Fall League. Just to put it in some perspective here, he had a nice 3-level season this year. Just got better as it went up. Started at high A, which a little bit too old for somebody who's 24. Did his damage there in a month, then jumped to Double A, kept it going, then jumped to Triple A, and did not miss a beat. And then by the time he's up at Triple A as a 24-year-old, that's perfectly fine as far as age to level. And then it's going to continue it here in Arizona Fall League. So he's going to get a 4-level season, and he's already hit 36 homers in the regular season. Now already has 5 homers and 47 plate appearances in the Arizona Fall League. Mervis is a fast riser. Folks are big time in on him. Hell, I would take him. I would take Matt Mervis over Meneses, especially given the price difference right now. So that's just another guy. He's at 325, nearly 100 picks lower than Meneses. What do you think of Matt Mervis, Cubs hitting prospect?
I'm very, very interested in him, but I do worry that like this, the great minor league season last year and now the Arizona Fall League, and everybody, all these analysts that are going to first pitch are going to get to see him in person. And if he hits, remember the year like Luis Urias hit that massive home run and everybody went crazy at the Fall League. I just feel like this is going to be one of the hype guys coming through draft season here over the next couple months. And the one thing I noticed, like when I did my draft, and I just wrote up my draft for Fangraphs, for the site on Fangraphs, So you can go read that. And one of the things I kind of mentioned in my takeaways at the end was that prospects are not going to be cheap this year. Guys like Gunnar Henderson, especially the guys who debuted last year, Gunnar Henderson, Corbin Carroll, those kind of guys, they're going to be really, really expensive. And I think you're going to see guys like Mervis.
Those guys.
Hmm?
We're going to talk about those guys.
I know, but I think you're going to see Mervis rise uncontrollably if he has.
Really?
Yeah, I think people are. First base has those weird fall offs. And
what do you think his peak is, though? He ain't rising above Meneses.
I think he is. I bet you Mervis is going ahead of Joey Meneses by March. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board. He has to be going higher than 228 because I'm talking about Meneses' price right now.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm not sure, especially at first base. Like where do you really think he goes? What kind of ADP you putting on Mervis then?
I think like 175.
Oh God, that's the number then. I'll put that on the board all day. That's insane. You might be right, and I'll take the L if you are. But that if people pay that, I will laugh.
I mean, he has everything shaping up for him to be. Again, I'm not saying like I'm even out at that price necessarily. I like Matt Mervis a lot.
I'm fully out at that price.
I think
baseman who has not played in the majors for pick 175.
I think he's going to play day one. Like there's no reason for the Cubs
but why? But why would I pay that when I got in this theoretical here? Josh Bell, Rowdy Tellez, Josh Naylor, Seth Brown.
All right, maybe I'm not in on
all those guys are going later. Like I'm not paying 175 for Mervis in any way, shape, or form. That's less about Mervis and any negativity with him, and more about the positivity of just waiting. I think getting those 30 homer hitters.
I mean, I agree with that, but I think he's going to go inside the top 200 by
okay.
Especially like I said,
put that on the board.
All right, top 200. I should write these down so I don't forget. I found a random doc of some board bets from.
I found some too that I think covered on stream because I had some with Colin too. So I was comparing because they all come through on like October. I think I put them in October 1st. Obviously, that's usually when the season kind of ends, and we got pushed back a week this year. But obviously, this one we can check on April 1st because it's an ADP thing. So I'm going to put it in here right now. Matt Mervis ADP, and it's got to be over 200 or 200 or lower. Okay, well, so those are the top 5 guys that weren't drafted last year and where they're going. Let's talk top 5 non-closer risers. Like I said, we know why a closer rises makes sense. Not really a whole lot of analysis there. Let's get into some of these players that you were talking about, these rookies. In fact, we got 4 rookies going into their second season, and then an arm that we did talk about recently, but I wonder if I think you actually changed about this guy on the fly. But we'll get to it in a moment. Michael Harris is the biggest jump. Plus, 720 spots. He did go in 6 of the 321 drafts last year, which might surprise you. Shouts to those 6 people jumping on the Michael Harris train. I knew who Michael Harris was. I did not consider him a draft eligible type guy, even for draft champions last year. So big respect to those folks picking I think at the time he would have been 20 years old. Yeah, his birthday is March 7th. So at the time they were taking a 20-year-old who was peaked at high A.
I believe all of those people were James Anderson of RotoWire. I mean,
there you go.
And he was huge on him. Shout out to him that he was in on that, because I had no idea who Michael Harris was, much less.
Like I said, I knew the name, but that's it. I can't claim beyond that. Especially, I never would have thought he was draft viable last year. I really wouldn't have.
No, not with what it looked like. I mean, we had questions about other guys on that team, like how are they going to get the playing time in that outfield? And then, Eddie Rosario just never was able to stay healthy. And Ozuna turned well. I mean, actually, as much as I hating on Ozuna this episode, apparently Ozuna was fine. Like, he hit like 23 home runs and like 400 plate apperances. Like he was totally fine.
He's just like a complete DH.
He's just a
and then
DH
off the
guy.
field, misbehavior. But yeah, like the Rosario thing, man, I wanted Rosario to be good, but his playoff tax was off the charts. And so, but again,
He
I
was also
never,
never healthy. Like he just
yeah.
was
Well, he
never
had the
healthy.
eye issue too, and that
Yeah.
didn't really seem to fix things. But I was never in on like, well, that means Michael Harris is going to be the
Yeah.
dude because a 20-year-old at high A. So again, we know that he is remarkably expensive. I guess the one thing I should have done was up 720 ranks, but up to what? Up to pick 30. So you mentioned it earlier in passing that he's a second rounder. You mentioned that there is some alarm to go with that with regards to his plate skills. I briefly mentioned Grissom's plate skills. Harris's are worse, 24% K rate, 5% walk rate, and you have some further with the chase rate and all that is also alarming. Does that take you off of Michael Harris this year with a 42% O swing?
He's been going in the second round fairly consistently. Like and I understand why. Like the upside is through the roof, but like I just don't understand how you can take him over Cedric Mullins and Randy Arozarena and guys like that. There's no way. Like I just can't do it. The 40% O swing is just petrifying to me. Like he's got league average contact skills in the zone. But he clearly doesn't have a really great understanding of what the zone is. And you see that, he had a 56% first pitch strike rate because pitchers are like, well, if you're just going to chase out of the zone, I'm not going in the zone. So like, I don't know. Like, I just think he's overpriced. And I think he's going to continue to be overpriced because of the numbers he did put up, last year. I mean, 441 plate appearances, 19 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 297. I think the BABIP's gonna come back down to earth a little bit, and the average will drop. I think he's probably like a 270 guy that is got the 25-25 upside, but also some pretty stark downside, especially in the batting average department. So I'm not in on Michael Harris as a second round pick. Like if he was a fourth or fifth round pick, I would be totally fine with that and probably targeting it. But second round, like I just can't rationalize that.
It's too much, and I gotta say, a player like this is the hardest player type I think to go against. It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of this type of player and just kind of blindly see that he was a homer away from 2020 at age 21, and he only did that in 114 games, and he is a premium prospect, and he's on one of the best teams. Let me just draft him. And I think sometimes maybe I'm speaking for let me say I'm speaking for myself here. I don't want to project this on everyone else, but I'm probably not alone. When you do this, that like for the most part, no one's really going to roast the pick either, right? Because because of where his ADP is, it's been deemed a bit of a safe pick. So if you want to take the gamble, you're kind of justified by the ADP. So it all adds up, I think, for a potential mistake. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at here with Michael Harris. I really like him, but I'm not sure that. I mean, let me not couch it. There is no downside built into this pick. This is all must perform because of how high you're taking him. I don't see myself with any Michael Harris just as a bit of a like protection. You mentioned Cedric Mullins. What about Randy Arozarena? And speaking of Randy Arozarena, remember all the hell he got last year? There was a lot of bad mouthing on Randy Arozarena last year, and he was going much cheaper than this. And then he goes out and actually betters his year, at least in terms of the stolen base production, 12 extra stolen bases up to 32. He matched his 20 homers. His average did come down 11 points, but 20 more ribbies. Fewer runs from 94 to 72, but bottom line is Randy Arozarena backed up things and ended up having another great season. He's more established, and maybe because he's older, I think that was also a reason of like, well, is this guy gonna fix that swing and miss? But I don't know here on Harris. I really think I'm out, Justin. I don't see myself taking him at that high of a pick. I think my ranking on outfield is going to have Michael Harris as more of like a fourth, fifth round pick, which means I'm never getting him. His low right now, his max is 48. That isn't close to what I'm looking to do. I mean, it's into the fourth round, so I shouldn't say it's not close to what. But I'm looking at like I was kind of hoping that he would be in Arozarena's range from last year. Instead, he rose all the way up with a Rosarena to where a Rosarena is this year. He's over a Rosarena. So, and for context, a Rosarena was picked 61 last year, and even that I think would be a little bit risky with Michael Harris. So, I hate to be so negative on such a bright young player, but that price is just way too robust for me.
Well, I mean, I have him right now, and for those of you who are on the Patreon, I've got my ranks up there. I posted them last night. I'm still kind of figuring out the outfield a little bit, but I think I got like the top 40 or something like that on there. I have him 17th at outfield, and if you look at if you look at the ADP, 17th is pick 62. It's right around Starling Marte.
Right.
Give me Starling Marte.
There you go. There's another power speed guy, and then right next is the next guy we're going to talk about. So I want to ask you where you ranked Corbin Carroll.
Oh, that's outfielders. A really, really good question. Probably a little bit lower.
He's 18th here in this ADP, and he's our next guy to talk about. I will give you the numbers on him while you're looking up where you ranked him. He went he's 686 picks higher. He did go in 11 drafts last year. I think that was certainly, I could see getting to Corbin Carroll in your 40s type round last year, more so than more so than Michael Harris, because, Corbin Carroll, higher rated prospect. I think he was closer to the majors and everything with regards to where he started. Yeah. So coming in, no. He was 20 years old and he peaked at high A as well. So it was actually very similar there, except he had much better plate skills too. But bottom line is it wasn't too far off. He has risen all the way up to 686 picks to the 18th outfielder off the board. Where do you have Corbin Carroll ranked?
I have Corbin Carroll ranked 21st.
Okay, so you're not too far off the market. Pick 63. How does that suit you when you hear about pick 63 for Carroll?
It still feels high. It still feels really high.
It's a higher range.
I love the skills though.
He's 48 to 91, so he's got a wider range. You might be able to get him a bit cheaper because he didn't do as much. But I think I agree with you though. Like in a way, I guess they're about 35 picks apart, Harris and Carroll. Shouldn't that split be further given what Harris did versus what Carroll did? Like. Now I'm going to go pro Harris and say, well, at least he put the numbers on the board. He put up a 2020 year. Carroll had 115 plate appearances in the majors. Why is he going quite that high?
He shouldn't be, but this is the helium I was talking about. He went in the 6th round of my draft. One last thing I want to mention on Harris. He had real issues against left-handed pitching last year. He had
trouble.
Yeah, he had 235 against lefties, I believe, last year. So, and like 3-something against righties. So, like the righty work carried a lot of the weight.
337 BABIP against lefties too. Can't just say it was a BABIP fall off. He struggled.
Yeah. So that's a major concern. Carroll, I have very few concerns about. I do just think he's going to be a really, really good hitter. And I think he kind of showed it in his kind of brief cup of coffee at the major league level. I wouldn't, maybe one of my bold predictions is Corbin Carroll outproduces Michael Harris. I think that, though maybe that's not bold enough. I'm sure that's what the commenters will say. But I love Corbin Carroll. I actually really love the Diamondbacks are doing. I think we talked about this briefly on a recent episode. Like the Diamondbacks are going to be sneaky good.
I think so.
They're a couple
have a chance
away, from like being really, really good. They still have some interesting minor league guys yet to come up. Carroll's got power, he's got speed, and like I said, I think that Diamondbacks lineup is going to be a lot better than I think people are giving it credit for. I really like Corbin Carroll, but you're right. Like the difference between him and ADP from Michael Harris probably shouldn't be this close. Like, this is one of those this is Bobby Witt Jr., right? And not like saying he's going to do what Bobby Witt Jr. did. But we saw this helium from Bobby Witt Jr. last year. People having to take him in the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds of drafts. And that's where you're going to have to take Corbin Carroll if you want him in 2023. I'm okay with doing it. I'd prefer not to. Like, I just would. I'd prefer not to. But I can understand why people are going to.
Yeah, like, that's the allure of power speed. I totally get it. And like we said, we think the Diamondbacks could be a little bit more of a force, especially with that offense. And so, the runs and ribby opportunities shouldn't be suppressed as much as they would on a normal bad team. He did strike out 27% of the time. with a big jump in swinging strike rate versus what Corbin Carroll had done at at double and triple A this year. Maybe a little bit of a concern. I think it's more of kind of learning the league. One thing I want to ask you about, though, his walk rate sliced in half, more than half. It was 15% in the minors, 7% in the majors. Do you attribute that to, being challenged more because he doesn't have crazy pop, small sample, he's not as good, and he was just guys were afraid of him in the minors, so he got walks just by virtue of really kind of being pitched around? I don't know. I'm speculating, so I'm asking you if you have any notion as to why Corbin Carroll's walk rate went in half.
I think, and I'm just kind of double checking the league numbers. Well, I was gonna say, like, I wonder how much, like, the league kind of forced him to try to lay off things outside of the zone. His zone percentage was just about 41%, but you know what? That's about league average. So, like, maybe that wasn't as much an issue. Like, he had an 82% zone contact, which is a little bit below league average. Swing strike rate was fine. Like, it was 11.4%. That should have, meant like a low to mid, kind of 20 strikeout rate. And he only swung outside the zone 31.7% of the time. Like we said, like that's just, right below league average. Like, that's fine. Like, I'm not worried about that. Or maybe that's right at league average. I think he's going to be fine. Like, he's got a pretty good hit tool. And I think this is just, maybe I think these numbers are just a little small sample foolishness. I don't see anything in the numbers that tells me he's going to strike out at a 30% clip. I think he's probably like a 23, 24% strikeout kind of guy in his first full season, with a bunch of power, a bunch of speed, and a decent average. So, we're talking about a guy who potentially, is like a 20-30 guy with a 270 batting average. And now I'm moving him up my ranks. Like, as I'm talking through this, like, I'm just getting more and more excited on Corbin Carroll. This feels like a trap, though. Like, for every prospect that goes and does what Michael Harris does, there's 7 prospects that, completely screw us over. And it's hard. I'd much rather look for the next Michael Harris as opposed to pay a 5th or 6th round draft price on Corbin Carroll. And Corbin Carroll's not going to be a 5th and 6th round draft pick for very long.
Yeah, again, we look at the names around them that we've already mentioned: Arozarena, Mullins, Marte. I mean, even Adolis Garcia, who I'm really not necessarily in on, even though he put up another great season.
I got all of those guys above Corbin Carroll, and I don't like Adolis Garcia. I will not draft Adolis Garcia. So
I will not have him ranked that high. Tyler O'Neill at pick 107. With a guy like Tyler O'Neill, I'm always on the buy low train. I'm never buying on the upswing with a guy like that. I think him at 107, O'Neill at 107 is more appealing to me than Carroll at 65.
I think that's fair. I've got O'Neill as my outfielder 26, so I think I'm probably above ADP, but I'm still below Carroll. I mean, just the profile on O'Neill, man. Like, I love the power, I love the speed, I love the defense from a guy like Tyler O'Neill. But man, that swing and miss, man, that's a problem. And now
he got his plate skills this year, though.
It couldn't have been any worse.
Put up 3 points on it. Yes, they could have. They could have been worse. Look at Michael Harris. He put up 3 points on his walk rate up to 10%, which I like, and lowered the strikeout rate by 4 points to 27%. So 27% is still pretty high. 13% swing strike rate. This is Tyler O'Neill we're talking about. But he rallied and ended up finishing 14-14 in 96 games. So there's still some appeal there, and I hope some of the shine wore off Tyler O'Neill, because like last year, you couldn't get me to pay the premium, and this year I think I'm in on the buyback.
You know what? You're right. I did not realize, like, the underlying skills are, I mean, they're not amazing or anything, but they're better. Like, he moved from being a 70-something% zone contact guy up to 82%. It's just a little bit below league average, but a guy with his kind of power profile, if he's hitting 82% zone contact, like, that's a really, really good number for him to kind of get back to where he was. He only swung outside of the zone less than 30% of the time. That swinging strike rate down to 12.7%. That means he could be potentially a 25% strikeout guy. And if Tyler O'Neill is a 25% strikeout guy, he could be a star again.
Yes, and his BABIP fell 89 points to 277. I got to imagine that there's some bad luck in that. And he was dealing with injuries, but he put the ball on the ground more, and his BABIP went way down. That usually doesn't happen, especially with somebody with power and speed. So I was out on Tyler O'Neill last year. I give myself a little back pat for avoiding the bomb there, but I'm right back in because this is a player I like. It's all due to price on Tyler O'Neill. Now that he's not going top 40 or whatever it was last year, I'm going to take the discount, and I'm going to take him over both those guys that we just talked about.
And I just sorted his second half by his second half numbers. They're actually better. The second half is what brought it up, which is the good sign, right? That he made changes and he got better in the second half. Tyler O'Neill going to start moving up my ranks. I think you're right. I would take him over Corbin Carroll, I guess. So
let's go.
I've got a the question is, do I take him over Taylor Ward?
I think I would, and I'm a big Taylor Ward guy because the dynamic speed there. And, normally I wouldn't just say, okay, I'll just take him because of the speed, but I also think that O'Neill can match or exceed Ward's power output. So when you also throw speed on top of it, I'll give up the perceived batting average, which I do believe Ward will beat him at, for the power speed combo. So yes, I'll have them close, but I will have O'Neill over Ward.
I just want to remind everybody, this is a really bad outfield year. A really, really bad outfield year. You get past like the top 20 and it gets ugly fast. And this is why you're going to see guys like Corbin Carroll raise up.
That's a good point too,
guys,
because the wards start to get this big on every guy.
Yeah.
And you're at like outfielder 25, and you're like, it's Chris Bryant who, he's in Colorado.
Nick Castellanos coming off an awful year. Do you believe in Anthony Santander? Like, what are we really getting from Stephen Kwan? Like, can he repeat?
Is Jake McCarthy legit?
Yeah, like there are still got Cody Bellinger mixed in there. Like, when you're especially if you're playing in a 15-team league, outfield gets really ugly really quick. For those of you who play Yahoo, the 3 outfielders leagues, it's going to be fine. Like, right?
It won't be too bad if you're still 3 outfielder, but if you're 5 outfielder and you're in 15-team leagues, especially, it really dries up there and you got to be careful. Let's jump to the mound real quick. Talk Tyler Glasnow. We won't go too deep because we did talk about him in the last episode when we were debating my rankings. I think, let me see if it was on the, yes. Okay. So we did get a comment on him too that might color things a little bit more too. And if I recall correctly, you did relent on him a little bit and say, okay, he did pitch well, move him up a little bit, maybe not as high as I had him. Weekend of Biden's said Glasnow did not have normal TJ surgery. It was that newer hybrid version. The recovery and return are faster than full-scale TJ. Glasnow also had a full offseason to keep throwing, so he'll be close to 18 months out. That is more than enough time to return, especially considering how he pitched in the fall. And I tend to agree there. You know how I feel about TJ returners. I'm usually quite cautious. However, he kind of started his return this year. It was only 6 2/3, but I don't think next year is going to be that full, like, disjointed return where he's going to be kind of up and down. I think there's a chance for Glasnow to go out and kind of be himself. Now, we still have 1 year over 88 innings in the majors, and that alone is a question whether he was coming off TJ or not. But the talent is just magnificent. He was drafted in 28 draft champions last year. He's moved up 666 spots this year, obviously going quite high now that he can once again, can once again be trusted. I'm not sure he's ever been able to be trusted. He's once again being seen as a viable option, going pick 76 on average as the 30th pitcher off the board. That includes relievers. Like I said, we talked about him last time, but what do you think about Tyler Glasnow, and does that info about the different TJ move anything for you?
I mean, it moves things a little, I guess. Here's the thing: like, this is a new surgery. We'd have no idea what the track record is on it. Then, I'm just never gonna get to the point where I'm close to the ADP. His ADP right now puts him as the 23rd starting pitcher if you take out those relievers, right? I'm just never gonna get there. Like, I just don't know how I can. I would assume the Rays will be somewhat careful with him, but maybe not. Like, he's only got 2 years left on his contract with the Rays. Maybe they just say, we're gonna let you fly. He's gonna want to fly because he wants to get paid once he gets through 2024 and kind of get that big contract. But I'm just very uneasy about it. And if I'm uneasy about my SP2, that is not a good way to start a draft. And so, like, I may be wrong. This may be Verlander again for me, where I was completely out on Verlander because I was just uneasy about what the workload might look like. He coming off of Tommy John, being old. Now, Glasnow's not old, but I have the other concerns. And I'm just going to go with a safer option for me at starting pitcher. I'm not gonna shade people for taking him, as a top 20 or top 25 starting pitcher. That is just not for me.
I can't really push back too much on that because there is the inherent risk. And again, the reason it differs so much from Verlander was a unicorn iron horse before he got TJ. Glasnow is anything but thus far. Within 111 innings being his max back in 2018 as a major leaguer. So you're riding that concern there, and that's looming. His skills have been completely off the charts. I mean, he really figured out his walk rate, something I was concerned with, and I was open about, like, hey, until I really see it, and I still haven't really seen it for that many innings, but I've seen enough here in these smaller samples with Tampa Bay to believe that he did make a real change with his mechanics to tighten up that walk rate. But the innings are a problem right now. I tell you, I probably, to take Glasnow, because I have him pretty high, I'm probably doing like a pretty heavy pitcher build at that point, where I've got a frontline ace, another guy, and then Glasnow. So maybe 3 of my first 5 picks are pitchers at that point. If I'm getting Glasnow, or 6 picks, he's going into the 6th round. So something like that is probably what I'm looking at. I hear you on not wanting him to be your 2. I will say this: if he is my 2, then I'm backing him up with a quick 3. I'm taking like Framber Valdez with my next pick in the 7th round type of
I think
something
that's
like
fair.
that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I think if I am drafting Glasnow, which I will not be this year, more than likely. Now, that can always change. Like, maybe I see him, in spring, and I go, he's back, and first outing in spring training, he's throwing 6 innings. What? He's just, workload is going to be no problem. I could always backtrack, but as I feel right now on November 1st of 2022, looking at 2023, is that there's no way. There's just no way. But if I were to, I would want it to be like, I would want to go Corbin Burns, Tyler Glasnow, Framber Valdez. Like, I would want like those. Like, I would want a top tier ace at the top, and then some sort of workhorse, some sort of guy that can just give me a ton of innings in case I don't get it from Tyler Glasnow. Because, like you mentioned, he's never thrown a ton of innings. So, like, why do we think this is the year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue with him is the previous issues that he's had staying healthy. So why would you necessarily feel confident that he's going to stay healthy this year for Tyler Glasnow? All right, moving on. Our next big non-closing riser is another guy you mentioned. He went in one draft last year. One intrepid drafter thought that Gunnar Henderson was worth one of their 50 picks. So he fits in this as opposed to the undrafted list. He's up 649 picks from last year up to, let me find out actually, his up to pick 102 right now. Gunnar Henderson is somebody that really looks like he could be pretty special immediately. He put up 19 homers, 22 steals in 503 plate appearances at Double and AAA this year. Came up in the majors, 4 homers and a steal in 2 attempts with the O's and 132 plate appearances. He is seen as a power speed guy, and there's big time upside here. Is he somebody that you're going to jump on? This is now our 3rd power speed youngster that we're seeing rise up the board with Harris and Carroll. Actually, 4th, you could say, with Grissom as well. Is Henderson somebody you like more or less than those guys? He's going a bit after them, but still quite high for somebody who has such limited experience.
I feel like the hype on him is going to get outrageous. I'm in this 3-sport league, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to make trades because my football team is dynamite. My basketball team is not dynamite because I don't know much about basketball. But my baseball team is pretty loaded. So I'm trying to trade some baseball to add to my basketball right now. And I went to the guy who's got Gunnar Henderson, and I was all like, hey, you could use a shortstop upgrade because Gunnar Henderson is not going to qualify at shortstop. Let me give you Bo Bichette. And he's like, Gunnar Henderson's already better than Bo Bichette. Like, what?
I'm sorry. Pardon?
But I mean, guess he must be an Orioles fan or something. I think he is. But like, that's insanity to me. And Gunnar Henderson, when I think went in the 8th round of my draft, and I was shocked. He went in the 8th round of my draft. There's no way I could pay that price. I love Gunnar Henderson. I really like Gunnar Henderson. I think he has the opportunity to play every day. He's going to be third base eligible, which is kind of where you want him to be eligible anyways, because third base has such huge drop-offs. There's power, there's speed. I think he's going to hit just enough to tap into that power and, you know, get on base enough to get to that speed. But 8th round, like, man, I don't know that I can pay that price. That feels very, very inflated.
It's not cheap.
No.
And, you know, we're kind of seeing a little bit of a theme here, right? With these guys up, and up. And like you said, you're going to have to pay the premium for these young bats this year if you want these potentially special power speed type guys. They're not coming at any sort of discount whatsoever.
Give me Josh Rojas 60 picks later.
You love you some Josh Rojas.
Why wouldn't you, dude? He had like 23 second half stolen bases. Like, he's multi-position eligible. He's playing on a team in Arizona that's getting better. Like, give me Josh Rojas all day long over Gunnar Henderson.
29 years old. I disagree with all day long. You can make a case for him, you know, a couple 3-4 rounds later, but I don't agree that it's that reverse 360 reverse slam dunk the way you're saying.
360 reverse slam dunk with my feet.
No, not necessarily there. I don't think it's all 100% free and clear with Josh Rojas. I think the upside with Gunnar Henderson is substantial.
The board. Josh Rojas has a better fantasy season than Gunnar Henderson.
Okay. That's planting your flag there with Josh Rojas.
I was trying to bait you into a bet.
I'm not that strident on it.
Okay. Right.
I'm just not.
Write it down.
Yeah, I'm just not like where you're at with take Josh Rojas 100 out of 100 times.
60 picks later.
Yeah, I don't think it's that signed, sealed, and delivered.
So are you taking Gunnar Henderson as a top 100 player? Because that's what he's going to be. I know he's 101 right now.
I'm not fully out on that.
He's going 10 picks behind Alex Bregman,
who I'll probably have instead. So then I wouldn't end up with Gunnar Henderson. But if I get left out on third base, I'm not completely averse to it. Whereas, you know,
15 picks ahead of our boy Caprizi.
I know the Caprizi train has derailed. Folks are out on our boy Corbin Hayes.
I thought I was going to be out, but at pick 150 or later, I'm like, okay, I'll take that. Like, I think at this point he is what he is. I think he's like a 12-30 guy that's going to have injury issues, which will prevent him from getting from the 30 stolen bases regularly. But
the biggest issue with Hayes is that where's the batting average that people were hoping for?
I think that batting average is going to be there. Like, I think
that's what I'm hoping for.
I think he's got his hit tool is fine. But like, I think Corbin Hayes is Starling Marte at third base and young. Like, okay, we're taking Starling Marte in the 3rd, 4th round, and I'm going to get Corbin Hayes in the 10th. All right, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's like I said, if people are pushing out on Corbin Hayes, which it looks like early on right now, they are kind of moving on. I'm going to stay bought in. My thing with Rojas and why I'm not so certain that it's the Rojas, even 60 picks later over Henderson is, what do you think about that power difference between the two? I think Henderson is a legit, 25 homer candidate, whereas Rojas hit 9 this year. He hit 11 last year, sub 150 ISOs. He's a 123 career ISO. That's my difference there. I think that's why the price is so different between them. I think there's a reason for it. I don't think they're clones of each other going 60 picks apart.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think they're clones. I think they're actually fairly different players. I'll take the value on Rojas later. Give me the guy who can give me some bags and going 60 picks later. Like, what do we think that Henderson's speed profile is? Like, I think he's probably at best a double-digit guy in the majors this year. Like, I don't think he's a guy who's gonna be.
He's a burner.
Wild. Is he?
Yeah, you're judging him because he's white, you little bastard.
No, I'm judging him based off our speed score on Fangraphs, who has him as a
pretty sure he's got
40.
Pretty sure he's got a pretty electric speed, if I recall correctly. And if you look at his speed coming up in the minors, it was always pretty sharp. You know, at the minor league level this year, he was 22 for 25 on the bases, only
91st percentile in sprint speed. So there you go. So
and
maybe
sprint speed alone does not a great mean you're going to get steals, but his home to first, I think, is pretty good too.
Yeah,
and Jeff says that Jeff Zimmerman has highlighted and done the studies that the home to first split is going to give you a better indicator of what potential steals are going to look like, more so than just the sprint speed. Having good sprint speed is, of course, good, right? Well, I'm not suggesting otherwise, but that alone does not generate steals automatically. And Gunnar Henderson was 32nd with a 4.19 home to first, and that's with a lot of ties. In fact, 4.01 was the tops with Garrett Mitchell, 4.05, Corbin Carroll. But you start to get a bunch of ties once you get past 4.09. So if you did it with ties, he's probably closer to like 25th home to first for Gunnar Henderson. So I think he can be a burner. And when I say burner, I really just mean 20 plus steals. I think that's burner territory in today's game.
And
if you can get 20 plus.
Any concerns with his launch angle? 2 degrees.
That would be bad. I would never really make any judgments off 132 plate appearances.
It's 82 batted balls, but he also did have a 50% ground ball rate in AAA this year.
He had 60% in the majors.
Yeah.
But again, he also had a 216 ISO in AAA, 261 in AA. We've seen power. I think there's development there. I think he's a better player than Josh Rojas is the point I want to impress. And so I think that price difference is there for a big, big reason. He's also 7 years younger. I'm just trying to stress that cheapness and that difference in price is merited more than it is some great bargain for.
Put it on the board then. Put it on the board. I'm still gonna take Josh Rowe. I mean, and I'm not saying I'm out on Gunnar Henderson. I just feel like that is because I really do like Gunnar Henderson a lot. I just feel like 8th round, man. That feels really rich. Like
we're paying for talent right now. That it's kind of a market where we're paying for raw talent. And I'm not averse to it. I've always been a get your guys type of drafter, and this is kind of when what we're seeing with these young prices is that a lot of other people are starting to take that on and putting some guys up with smaller track records that are just jumping way up. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. It's a little bit jarring because we're not necessarily used to it. But when you talk about the youth movement in the game, that's what this is going to yield, is that guys with 1, 2, or less than 1 full year of experience are going to start moving way up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a matter of whether or not you want to pay that price.
Exactly.
I will have Gunnar Henderson on some teams. So as much as I've been disparaging his honor, I have been I've been putting the Scarlet G on Gunnar.
Yeah, you have.
I still will end up with him in some drafts this year.
You've been putting Scarlet ADP on him.
Yeah, I do want some exposure to Gunnar Henderson just because I do agree with you. I think the talent level and upside is huge. I just don't know that it's that much better than Josh Rojas because Josh Rojas is amazing.
I don't know about that. I want to like Josh Rojas. I bought in when he first got traded over. I've been pretty underwhelmed since. I like that he spiked 23 steals this year. That was really nice, but it was with a sub 400 slug, which I think can't be overstated there in terms of where Josh Rojas's output's going to be. But if they trust him to play every day, he can get, low double-digit homers with 25 plus steals. That's still going to be valuable, especially 60 picks after Gunnar Henderson.
4 home runs and 15 stolen bases in the second half for Josh Rojas.
Not bad at all.
Second base and third base eligible, the two kind of thinnest positions at in the infield.
Mm-hmm.
Losing the outfield eligibility sucks, though.
That's tough.
Yeah.
All right. let's talk Spencer Strider here. He is our last guy on this list and our third Brave. As I mentioned, we would talk about a bunch of them. He went in 242 drafts last year. So plenty of people in the 50-round draft and holds were like, hey, this Spencer Strider guy could come up and be something. They're probably seeing him as like a reliever. Maybe he would get some starts. Like, I don't know. I didn't see a lot of hype about him or anything, but obviously quite a few people were taking him if he went in 242 of the 321 drafts, but he's still up 642 picks over last year because, of course, he went out and had a brilliant season. He is now the 12th pitcher off the board. You take out the closers, that makes him the 10th SP. Pick 36. We have talked a bit about him as well in passing here. I think it was from the early draft champions review back on October 14th. So just a couple weeks ago that we talked about him. How much are you how interested are you in paying this premium for Spencer Strider? You talk about somebody like Tyler Glasnow that you're worried about. I think that all checks out. Spencer Strider went out and checked every box, though, right? He didn't start all year. They had a concerted plan to make sure that they didn't run out of innings for him, especially if they'd had a longer playoff run, which I'm sure that's what they assumed they were going to do. And so he was in and out a little bit to start the year, but then he finally took over a full-time spot in late May, and I think that was their plan all along. Even though he had a couple like 3 and 4 inning outings before that, people were trying to jump on him starting then in April and early May and then cutting him, right? He ended up on 3-4 teams before he landed somewhere with Spencer Strider. Then he took over in late May, got a full rotation spot. And then Justin, down the stretch, what really impressed me was he was an easy 6 guy. He wasn't just some 5 and dive as a 2-pitch guy who kind of gasses, airs it out and then is gassed in the 4th, 5th inning. He was consistently going not well over 5, but over 5, and had 6+ innings in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of his last 15. Spencer Strider did end the season with an injury to his lower half. He'll be 24 next year. The strikeouts are off the charts. There's pluses, there's minuses. I think there's more pluses than minuses. Are you paying the premium for for Spencer Strider, excuse me, for Josh Rojas, for Spencer Strider?
I think his injury was an oblique issue, right?
Okay, not lower half, pardon me.
So not lower, but lower than the arm. So we'll take that as lower half because it's not an arm issue. So we're not as worried about it, right? If it's not an arm issue, we're not as worried about it. Man, this is hard because I understand why he is going as a top 10 pitcher right
top
now.
10 SP, top 12 overall.
But I can't rationalize it. And maybe
21st for me, so I'm obviously not getting him right.
I have him higher than you, but I don't have him that high. I can't rationalize taking him over Zach Wheeler or Julio Urias. I don't know how you I get it. I get the upside. The upside is amazing. The upside is unreal if he can just do what he did over the course of a full season this last year, because Spencer Strider was unreal. A 38% strikeout rate. Like, that is unreal. Like, we're talking like 10,000 strikeouts in 2023. Like, you would only need to draft him as a starting pitcher if he reaches his upside. You could just draft 8 relievers to go along with him. He will carry that rotation, win 45 games. I love the upside of Spencer Strider. There were kind of injury issues throughout the season. Like, this wasn't a guy who was completely healthy. It's a real unknown whether or not he can continue to maintain these strikeout rates without the walk rate going up or the home run rate going up. I think this is one of those situations where I will be unlikely to get him anywhere, but I'm also not going to beat up anybody who wants to start off their draft with Spencer Strider. I think he's best suited for a pocket aces strategy. Give me Corbin Burns and Spencer Strider.
Sure.
And then let me not worry about starting pitching for the next 8 rounds or whatever.
Well, only thing I'll push back on is I don't think there really were any injuries during the season.
There wasn't. I feel like there was.
I mean, none that took him out. I mean, he didn't hit the IL except for the oblique. And I don't really see, he had a few things that rests that lingered beyond although I think that one's the All-Star break, and then a couple 6s and 7s, a 6 and a 7 days rest in August. But again, that might be more of like load management there. I think he was pretty healthy during the season until the oblique came.
I'm looking it up. You could be right.
But, again, there's so much upside with him. The thing that was interesting to me about Strider, though, is he finished 21st among starters this year on the auction calculator with this great season. I understand people are, adding more innings and hoping that he goes up 160, 170 innings. But is that going to move him from 21 to 10? I'm not so sure. That price is just a little bit too high for me. And by the way, I didn't rank him 21st just because that's where he ranked last year. I didn't even realize that he's moved down to 21 after some shuffling and altering of other players. I could even move him up a few spots, but the best I could probably really do as I'm eyeballing my board is 16, 17 for Strider, which I think still takes me out of the sweepstakes. I don't think I'm getting him. Love the player. I just, any concern that he's also a 2-pitch guy, or the 2-pitch is just so good that you're not worried about it? Because I'm reluctant to make too much of that, but then I got Eno in the back of my head, hearing his voice talk about how even just having a third pitch, even if it's not very good, is still better than not having it, just because it gives you something to go to. And the fact that he Strider is pretty much a 2-pitch guy. It didn't cost him anything as far as a platoon split. He handled lefties just as well, or just about. But is there any concern on that front with Strider?
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some concerns. And you were right. There were no other injuries. I don't know what I was remembering, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big concern. I mean, we've seen guys be successful with a 2-pitch mix, but not very many. Yeah, we've also seen guys really, really struggle with that without having that third pitch, even after having kind of like a breakout kind of season or something. So
and Nelson Lamet didn't do it as long as Strider. I want to be clear. I'm it's a little bit tongue in cheek on that, but not 100%. Nelson Lamet, the 69 innings of 2020 were so nice. 35% K rate, 8% walk rate. He was brilliant, and then he came back. Now, he had record of having command issues and things like that. Again, it's not a 1-to-1, but what happens if one of the pitches isn't there for Strider?
Mm-hmm.
Then you're a one, like, it really cuts your margin for error. And he still had a 9% walk rate, right? Like, he's still a flamethrower that sometimes can't command his electric stuff. And I'm just not sure that I can free and easily trust him as my number 2 guy, or even my number 1 if I don't take one of the top guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of those guys that we didn't see a home run issue from this year, and so I think people are just projecting that will carry over. What we did see is when he has trouble locating, like, he'll walk a bunch of guys. We saw a 5 walk outing, a bunch of 3 walk outings, and when the guy's not going 5 every game, like 3 walk outings are a bit more concerning than if he was going 6 every game. I think this is a risk reward thing, and I think people are often going to say, I want the highest reward early, and I tend to be the guy that I want the lowest risk early. Like, I just can't imagine taking him over Zach Wheeler, and that's
exactly
where he's going. Like, I can't take him over guys who have won Cy Youngs, who are still really elite, and as opposed to a guy who's thrown 100 innings at the major league level, amazing innings, but a 2-pitch guy who's only thrown 100 innings at the major league level. I just not gonna pay that price.
Yeah, and that's where I come out with Strider, and it's one of those things where you can love a player, but you don't love the price, and then you just don't end up with him. That's what I'm looking at with Spencer Strider right now. Probably not going to have him. Going to have to, root for him vicariously through video games and DFS, using him on occasion when he's starting there, because I just don't see a lot of teams where I'm going to have Spencer Strider. So,
Yeah.
Michael Harris, Corbin Carroll, Tyler Glasnow, Gunnar Henderson, Spencer Strider are the top 5 non-closer risers, and the top 5 undrafted from 2021 to this year. Alexis Diaz, who's now pick 149, Vaughn Grissom, who's now pick 182, Joey Meneses at 228, Koudai Senga at 296, and Matt Mervis at 325. Got 2 other little 5-packs here. We'll save those for next Tuesday because, of course, in Arizona, we'll probably talk some Arizona-based stuff, cover some fall league players, cover some draft talk there with Jason, but we'll go ahead and cap it here with these and then get into those other 2 lists next week. Justin, I'll be seeing you in just a couple days, man.
I can't wait, man. It's just one of my favorite weekends of the year, and I made it almost a week just because I wanted to spend as much time out there as possible. So I'll be there. I get in Wednesday afternoon. I take off Monday afternoon. Can't wait to see you, brother.
Can't wait, man. I'll see you in a couple days.
Take it easy.